What if one of the greatest actors in Hollywood history, a man who played the toughest, most feared characters ever put on screen, was almost thrown out of the film industry before he ever made a single movie? What if the studio executives looked at this young man and said, "Your Adam's apple is too big, your teeth are chipped, you talk too slow"? That man was Clint Eastwood, and instead of quitting, he went on to direct and star in films that won the Academy Award for Best Picture. He became a symbol of American masculinity that the entire world recognized. He worked well into his 90s while men half his age retired. But none of that was supposed to happen, because Clint Eastwood's real story, the one Hollywood never tells you, is not a story of overnight success. It is a story of humiliation, poverty, rejection, and a stubbornness so powerful it changed cinema forever. This is that story. Clint Eastwood Jr. was born on May 31st, 1930, in San Francisco, California. He was the son of Clint Eastwood Sr., a steelworker, and Ruth Runner, a homemaker. The timing could not have been worse. The Great Depression was strangling America. Banks were collapsing, factories were shutting down, millions of families had nothing to eat. The Eastwood family moved constantly, from Piedmont to Sacramento, from Oakland to Pacific Grove, following whatever work Clinton Sr. could find. By the time young Clint was a teenager, he had attended nearly 10 different schools. Think about that. 10 schools. No roots, no stability, no close friendships that could last. Most children would have broken under that pressure, but something in Clint hardened instead. He was quiet, tall, awkward. He did not fit in easily anywhere, but he watched everything. He absorbed every room he walked into. He learned to read people, their silences, their body language, their unspoken fears. That skill would later make him one of the most powerful screen presences in movie history. But as a teenager, all it made him was lonely. He drifted through odd jobs, hay baler, logger, steel furnace worker. He was physically powerful but intellectually restless. He did not know what he wanted. He just knew he wanted something more. In 1950, the United States Army drafted him. He was sent to Fort Ord in California as a swimming instructor, and it was at Fort Ord that everything changed. Here is a moment that history rarely discusses because it sounds too dramatic to be real. In 1951, Clint Eastwood boarded a military plane, a Douglas AD Skyraider, for a flight from Seattle to San Francisco. The plane developed engine trouble over the Pacific Ocean. It went down. Clint was forced to swim several miles through freezing, shark-infested water to reach the shore at Point Reyes, California. He survived. He was 21 years old. He had just cheated death in the cold Pacific, and when he walked out of that water, something inside him had shifted permanently. He later said that near-death experience made him realize life was too short to drift. At Fort Ord, he had befriended several young actors who were stationed there, men who talked about Hollywood, about auditions, about a world where a man could make something of himself through performance. Clint had never seriously considered acting, but suddenly, for the first time, it sounded like the right direction. He enrolled at Los Angeles City College to study business, but his feet kept taking him towards the film studios. A Universal Pictures casting director named Arthur Lubin spotted him. Lubin was impressed by his height, his face, his physicality. He signed Clint to a contract, $40 a week.
It felt like a fortune. It felt like destiny. It was almost a disaster. Universal Studios put Clint Eastwood through their acting program. He studied voice, he studied movement, he worked hard. And then the studio executives reviewed him. Their verdict was brutal. He spoke too slowly. His Adam's apple was too prominent. His teeth were chipped. His smile was not smooth enough. He did not have the polished, Hollywood-manufactured look that studios in the 1950s demanded. In 1955, Universal dropped him. His contract was terminated. He was 25 years old, broke, with a wife. He had married Maggie Johnson in 1953, and no real career prospects. He dug swimming pools to survive. He worked as a gas station attendant. He pumped sewage from septic tanks. He was a Hollywood hopeful doing the dirtiest jobs in California. Most men would have stopped dreaming. Most men would have found a stable trade and accepted that the movies were not for them. Clint Eastwood was not most men. He kept showing up to auditions. He got small, forgettable parts in forgettable films, parts so small his name barely appeared in the credits. For 5 years, he existed on the margins of an industry that did not want him. And then, the phone rang with news that would change everything. In 1959, Clint Eastwood was cast in a Western television series called Rawhide. He played Rowdy Yates, a cattle drover, a secondary character, not the lead. But Rawhide became a phenomenon. The show ran for 8 seasons, 217 episodes. Every week, millions of Americans sat in front of their televisions and watched this tall, laconic, effortlessly cool young man herd cattle across the American West. Clint was not a great actor yet, but he had something the camera loved, a stillness, a presence. When he said nothing, the audience leaned forward. Hollywood noticed. But here's what most people do not know about those Rawhide years. While he was earning a steady paycheck for the first time in his life, Clint was watching the directors. He was sitting behind the camera between takes, asking questions about lenses and angles and lighting. He was teaching himself filmmaking while pretending to just be an actor. He already knew that acting was not his ultimate destination. He wanted to control the story. He wanted to direct. But first, he needed a role that would turn him into a legend. That role came not from America. It came from Italy. In 1964, Clint Eastwood received an offer from an Italian director named Sergio Leone. Leone was making a Western in Spain. He wanted Clint to play a mysterious gunslinger, a character with no name, no backstory, no sentiment. Just a cigar, a poncho, and a gun that moved faster than thought. The pay was $15,000 and a percentage of profits, from a low-budget European film that American studios considered a joke. Clint's American agent told him not to do it. CBS, who produced Rawhide, advised against it. Everyone said it was beneath him. Clint said yes.
A Fistful of Dollars was released in Europe in 1964. The audience response was unlike any Leone had expected. The film broke box office records across Italy, Spain, Germany, and France. Europeans were transfixed by this new kind of Western hero, cold, morally ambiguous, lethal, so different from the clean-cut cowboys of American cinema. Leone made 2 more films with Clint, For a Few Dollars More in 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966. The trilogy transformed both men into icons. When the films were finally released in America in 1967, audiences were stunned. They had never seen a Western like this. Clint Eastwood, the man Universal Studios had rejected for having a prominent Adam's apple, was now the most magnetic Western star on Earth. But Clint had already moved on to the next step of his plan. In 1967, Clint Eastwood did something almost no movie star had ever done at his career stage. He started his own production company, Malpaso Productions. From that point forward, Clint controlled his own projects. He chose the scripts, he hired the directors, he negotiated directly with distributors. But the role that defined this era, the role that made the whole world know the name Clint Eastwood, came in 1971, Dirty Harry. Clint played Inspector Harry Callahan, a San Francisco detective who operated outside the law's gentle boundaries. Harry was brutal, unapologetic, and devastatingly effective. The line he delivered while pointing his .44 Magnum at a wounded criminal became one of the most quoted sentences in film history. You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk? Dirty Harry grossed nearly $66 million worldwide against a budget of $4 million. It changed the action film genre permanently. In 1971, while the world celebrated Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood quietly made his directorial debut with Play Misty for Me. Critics were surprised. It was not a cash-grab vanity project. It was a tightly constructed, genuinely frightening film that showed real craft and restraint behind the camera. Hollywood began to understand this man was not just a movie star. He was a filmmaker. And then, in 1992, at the age of 62, Clint Eastwood made the greatest film of his career, Unforgiven. It was a Western, but unlike any Western ever made. It was a meditation on violence, guilt, aging, and the cost of a life lived outside mercy. At the 65th Academy Awards, Unforgiven won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. Clint Eastwood, the man who had pumped sewage from septic tanks in his 20s, stood on the Academy Awards stage and accepted the Oscar for Best Director. He was 62 years old, and he was not done. What happened next in Clint Eastwood's career is statistically almost impossible. Most directors peak once. Most stars have one defining era. Most creative people experience one significant burst of greatness and then a long, slow decline. Clint Eastwood did it twice. In 2004, he made $1 Million Baby. At the 77th Academy Awards, Million Dollar Baby won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. Clint Eastwood had won the Oscar for Best Director twice, in 1993 and 2005, separated by 12 years, at ages 62 and 74. No other director in Hollywood history has achieved that particular combination. Then came American Sniper, which became the highest-grossing war film in American history. At age 84, Clint Eastwood directed a film that made $250 million in America alone. Who does that? Now, who was Clint Eastwood when the camera stopped? The truth is more complicated than the legend. He is an accomplished jazz pianist, composing scores for several of his own films. He runs every day. He follows a disciplined diet. He has said that he has never stopped working because work is what keeps him alive. At 94 years old, he continues to work. He remains, without question, the most durable creative force in American cinema history. As an actor, he appeared in over 60 films. He created characters permanently embedded in global culture. As a director, he made over 40 films. He won the Academy Award for Best Picture twice. He was told at 25 that he did not belong in Hollywood. He responded by spending the next 70 years redefining what Hollywood could be. But here's what we have not told you yet. We told you about the success, the Oscars, the box office records, the decades of dominance. What we have not told you about is the controversy, the darkness, the films that nearly destroyed his reputation, the personal decisions that shocked even his closest collaborators, the feud with a major Hollywood studio that lasted for years and nearly ended his directing career before it truly began, and the one film, a film that Clint himself fought to make against the advice of everyone around him, that divided America, generated death threats, and became the most politically explosive movie of the 21st century. That story, the story of the shadows behind the legend, is coming in Part 2. Make sure you are subscribed, because Part 2 drops very soon. And trust me, the second half of Clint Eastwood's story is even more extraordinary than the first.